Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Pad Paramahansa Padavijikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavijikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Kokti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. And Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, let me just get set up here. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. So, it is yesterday's verse, but we need to chant something and no one read a new verse, so we'll chant this one. Nice you noticed, though. It's good. Okay. On this 21st day of August, 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're studying the 6th canto, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, 17th chapter, Mother Parvati curses Chitraketu, text 31 through 33, and we'll chant 31 together. Vasudeve, Bhagavati, Bhaktim, Udbhatam, Nirnam, Jnana, Vairagya, Viryanam, Nahi, Kaschid, Japashrayah, Vasudeve Bhagavati, Bhaktim Udbhatam Nirnam, Jnana Vairagya Viryanam, Nahi Kaschid Japashrayah, Vasudeve Bhagavati, Bhaktimud Bhatam Nirnam, Jnana Vairagya Viryanam, Nahi Kaschid Japashrayah, Vasudeve Bhagavati, Bhaktimud Bhatam Nirnam, Jnana Vairagya Viryanam, Nahi Kaschid Japashrayah, Vasudeve Bhagavati, Bhaktimud Bhatam Nirnam, Jnana Vairagya Viryanam, Nahi Kaschid Japashrayah. Manibandhani. Vasudeve Bhagavati, Bhaktimud Bhatam Nirnam, Jnana Vairagya Viryanam, Nahi Kaschid Japashrayah. Anyone else want to have a go here? Go ahead. Vasudeve Bhagavati, Bhaktimud Bhatam Nirnam, Vairagya, Jnana Vairagya Viryanam, Nahi Kaschid Japashrayah. Might as well go, Paul.
Okay. Vasudeve Bhagavati,
Vasudeve Bhagavati,
Bhaktim Udvahatam Nirnam,
Bhaktimud Bhatam Nirnam,
Jnana Vairagya Viryanam,
Jnana Vairagya Viryanam, Nahi
Kasid Vayapasrayaha,
Nahi Kaschid Japashrayah. You want to try, Prabhupada?
Yes. Vasudeve Bhagavati,
Vasudeve Bhagavati, Bhaktimud Bhatam Nirnam, Jnana Vairagya Viryanam, Nahi Kaschid Japashrayah. Vasudeve Bhagavati, Bhaktimud Bhatam Nirnam, Jnana Vairagya Viryanam, Nahi Kaschid Japashrayah. So since we did this one yesterday, I'm just going to read the translation of this one and the next one. Persons engaged in devotional service, this is Lord Shiva speaking, persons engaged in devotional service to Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, have naturally perfect knowledge and detachment from this material world. Therefore, such devotees are not interested in the so-called happiness or so-called distress of this world. Neither I, Lord Shiva, nor Brahma, nor the Ashwini Kumaras, nor Narada or the other great sages who are Brahma's sons, nor even the demigods can understand the pastimes and personality of the Supreme Lord. Although we are part of the Supreme Lord, we consider ourselves independent, separate controllers, and thus we cannot understand His identity. And then today's verse, I'll just do the Sanskrit myself. Na yasyasti priya kaschin na priya swaparopi va atmavat sarvabhutanam sarvabhuta priyo harihi. He, the Lord, holds no one as very dear and no one as inimical. He has no one for his own relative, and no one is alien to him. He is actually the soul of all living entities. Thus he is the auspicious friend of all living beings, and is very near and dear to all of them. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, in His second feature, is the Supersoul of all living entities. As one's self is extremely dear, so the Superself of the Self is still more dear. No one can be the enemy of the friendly Superself, who is equal to everyone. Relationships of dearness or enmity between the Supreme Lord and the living beings are due to the intervention of the illusory energy. Because the three modes of material nature intervene between the Lord and the living beings, these different relationships appear. Actually, the living entity in his pure condition is always very near and dear to the Lord, and the Lord is dear to him. There is no question of partiality or enmity. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this, how should you say, the fact that the Super Soul, Krishna, is very dear to every living entity, but at the same time, he's neither dear nor not dear. He says, and he says in the Bhagavad Gita, famously, Samoham Sarvabhutanam Name Dveshto Ditinaspriya Ye Bhajanditamam Bhaktya Mayate Teshu Chapyaham. That I am equal to all. Samoham Sarvabhuteshu Name Dvesho Sinapriya. Nobody is my enemy and nobody is dear to me. Napriya. But ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya. The word tu is very important. It means but, and the other on the contrary. Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya mayate teshu chapyaham. But for those who worship me, I am very dear to them, and they are dear to me. They are in me, like that, very intimate. So this paradox is resolved when we understand that the apparent enmity of the Lord, or enmity between any beings, or as we've been reading, the sense that, oh, this is very good, this is bad, I have to try to get that and avoid that, the dualities of this world, that it's all simply an illusion. That everything in the material world is bad in the sense that it helps to cover our original knowledge of Krishna. It is damaging. It is arranged like that for Krishna because we wanted it. We want to forget Krishna to try to be false enjoyers and controllers of this world. But this is not good for us. We have to look at everything that whatever Krishna does is good, ultimately good, even though it seems to be horrific. You know, arranging for the battle of Kurukshetra, all millions of elephants and horses, what this big human beings were killed. Jarasandha 17 times annihilating his whole armies, all this blood on the battlefield. How is that good? It's ultimately good. All those horses, all those human beings who were killed were elevated because they were being killed by Krishna. They were being purified by that. So it's ultimately good, but it looks pretty horrific. So, similarly, as Krishna declares in the Bhagavad Gita, 5:29, very important verse, known as Prabhupada christened it the peace formula. How we can all be peaceful, both individually and socially, internationally. Bhoktaram yajñatapasam, sarvaloka maheshwaram, sudidam sarvabhutanam, gyatva mam shantam richyati. Very appropriate verse for this purport, to expand on it. So what he's saying there is that I am the ultimate enjoyer of all the sacrifice and austerities that anyone performs in this world. I am the proper enjoyer. Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram. I am the supreme controller of every planet, of every being. So, pretty awe-inspiring, huh? But then he says, Suridam sarva bhutanam. I am the most dear friend of every living entity. Suri, not just the sakha, there's different words like in English. We have a friend, bosom buddy, acquaintance, right? Different degrees of intimacy. So similarly, Surit is the most intimate friend. Just as Prabhupada would sign his letters, your ever well-wisher. That's how he describes what a Surit is. Surit, and in the heart, he's always with us as the Super Soul, trying to give us good advice, which we're refusing at every moment, as conditioned souls. So, but why is he trying to give us good advice? It all comes down to love. Because we are originally the most dear associates of his in the spiritual world, and we've left to wander around this material world trying to enjoy this, trying to enjoy that, suffering like anything, dying, being reborn. So you can see a loving father who says, well, how can I get him back? You know, I think of so many instances, especially during the hippie era, the late 60s, early 70s, you know. It's still going on. But so many young kids were leaving home. I had a personal experience. I wanted to check things out. You know, I wasn't a hippie. I considered myself a revolutionary. I was part of the anti-war, group. I wasn't really into taking drugs and everything. But I knew everything was going on in San Francisco, so I said, okay. So my friend, he got a drive away from New York all the way to San Francisco. So we're driving, I was driving all the way over there. Anyway, we had an adventure in Reno. I'm not going to get into it. I almost got arrested. But I won't tell that story. I wasn't doing anything illegal. But anyway. So we survived. We went to Haight-Ashbury. Where else are you going to go? And I was wandering through it. But by that time, 1 year later, this is 68 rather than 67, the summer of love was over. You know, if I'd been there in 67, I might have run into Prabhupada in the park. You know, the Hare Krishnas running. But I don't even remember seeing the Hare Krishnas. So the point is that I went, all the way, and there was a whole faction of young people who were rejecting the ordinary material, the ticky-tacky houses, Levittown, the post-war, where everyone was trying to just settle back into the middle-class thing. No, we don't want to do that, And so they thought, the drugs and free sex and all this stuff was going to, and music, big music, was going to do it. But of course it didn't. And ultimately, the war kept going, and the hippie era ended, and the drugs changed, and Prabhupada, when he came, he saw this, and he saw these unfortunate souls, just like he's a representative of the super soul. So he's feeling compassion for everybody, and he's seeing that the ones who are most likely are able to respond are these souls who've rejected ordinary material life and are searching for something transcendent. Because the drug itself gave you some feeling, some hint of God and something beyond the ordinary. So that opened up the channels that that a certain number of them, the fortunate ones, were able to hear Prabhupada, and most importantly, of course, take up the chanting. And where you really get a taste, anyone who tries it with a little concentration and sincerity is going to feel the power of the mantra. And so that was how Prabhupada was able to do it. So he's representing the Super Soul. This is very important understanding. The Super Soul, Krishna, as the Super Soul, is the best friend of every living entity. And he wants to help us. But we're so stubborn that we don't take the good advice he's trying to give. And so instead, he ends up having to give us the intelligence by which we can mess around in Maya and suffer and learn the lesson ultimately. But what he really wants to teach us is Bhagavatam. And so he appears outside as the scripture, beginning with Bhagavad Gita, and as the pure devotee. The Super Soul appears in. And that's the same all-merciful, loving, father figure who's trying to help us to come out of this confusion where we're caught in the duality of this world and just suffering like anything. So that's the basic theme here. And as Krishna says in some other verses that I picked out, okay, samaham sabhavuteshu. And then there's these verses I think we've already been referred to, But this is one. Sadhavo vidiyam mayam sadhunam vidiyam toham madanyate najananti naham tebyo managapi. The pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of the pure devotee. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I don't know anyone else but them. This is actually the feeling of the Lord. And he sent, this is a famous verse spoken to Durvasa Muni, who had offended Ambarish. Offended isn't the right word. He tried to kill him with a kritya, a female fire-like demoness that he created by pulling hair out like that. These yogis can do these nefarious things. Durvasa is always involved in these things. I once thought that Durvasa meant that his clothes were far away, because I really don't know in Sanskrit. I said Vasa maybe, but no. Vasa is the place where you live. Durvasa means someone who you can't live with. It's impossible to live with him. He's such an aggravating soul. So anyway, Durvasa had grievously offended Ambarish Maharaj, who was simply completely serene in it. Can you imagine? Here's this huge fiery demon come. We had this little fake hurricane come, and everyone was freaking out. You know, batten the hatches, the floods are coming, you know. So I was thinking after the whole, I think it's done now, right? It's pretty much over. So I was thinking how wonderful a metaphor it is. Here we are in New Govardhan and Krishna protected. There's not going to be any rain, you know, it's a little drizzle. It's supposed to be a hurricane. Anyway, I took that as symbolic. And I called up to make sure they're okay in Big Bear Mountain, and Tyler said, yeah, everyone's okay, you know, we're coming back tonight, we'll be here. So that's a relief. So the idea is that, you know, we concoct these dualities, and we live in the dualities. You know, this is good, this is bad, and it's just, and everyone else is living in it. So therefore, the illusion is catching. It's like that, and we need an intervention. Just like if someone is completely, you know, into some drug thing or alcohol or depression, he can't help himself, but him or herself. But if some dear friend comes and says, "Look, come with me. We're going to go. You know, I'm going to help you," and then takes you and you trust that person, and takes you to a place where there's association, there's some therapy, there's no drugs. You can get stronger, you know, from that. That's really what ISKCON is. That's why we need the association to become stronger in Krishna consciousness, so we can transcend the dualities. So we can see, I'm not going to get into all the this is bad, this is good, running after the good, afraid of the bad, you know. I'm just going to chant Hare Krishna and take shelter, and you finally see that you can tolerate vairagya, you know, that verse which is quoted in the purport here. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Piyojitaha Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayirahoitukam. By detachment and knowledge, one becomes equipoised in this world. And here it says, just by practicing bhakti. Vasudeva Bhagavati, bhakti, by engaging in devotional service. Not worrying about, you know, gritting your teeth and not doing something, or gritting your teeth and doing what you really don't want to do. But if you chant the holy name, there's this classic, incredible quote here. I don't know if you picked up on it in one of these purports. That, I don't know where it is right now. Oh, here it is. In any condition of life, one will be happy if he chants the holy name of the Lord. That's a memorable quote. That's, I put it, you know. And because the dualities are not real, the same mind and the same body exist in the same material world of duality when we are awake. So because the same mind and body exist in the same material world of duality when we are awake, the so-called happiness and distress of this world are no more real than the false superficial happiness of dreams, happiness and distress of dreams. In other words, we're living a dream-like existence in material consciousness, birth after birth. None of it really makes an ultimate difference. It's just keeping us bound here with this entranced, as Prabhupada said, under the spell of Maya. So waking up from that spell solves all the problems. And the process is systematic bhakti yoga, centered on the chanting of the holy name. Because that chanting means we're associating directly with Krishna. And by the more sincerely we chant with great concentration and devotion and prayerfully, avoiding the offenses, the quicker Krishna's influence will act upon us and purify us, so that we, so many anxieties slip away and we begin to get a real taste for Krishna consciousness. And that doesn't have to end, because it's not based on the body really, it's based on the soul. And once you're able to connect the soul with Krishna, you can experience the reality of this in any condition of life. One will be happy if you chant the holy name of the Lord. And we saw the example of Srila Prabhupada. Through all the dangers and all the difficulties of the early days, plus what he went through in India, he always had that, his close association with the spiritual master by following his order. That was the key thing. And that was, he describes, I was just listening to a tape, how it was a real, thing for him to take sannyas. He was avoiding it at first. He says, I was horrified, even though his spiritual master was coming in his dreams and encouraging him to take sannyas, because, that would make him really an effective preacher. And eventually, when God, I think it was Keshava Maharaj, who encouraged him, at the latter, he was getting older now, 56 or something like that. You really need to take sannyas in order to really, if you want to preach, And he did it finally, and there, and of course the lecture was given in modern times, and he says, now I see how merciful my spiritual master was. I'm so thankful that he forced me to take sannyas, Because a materialist, of course, Prabhupada is a Nitya Siddha. But you establish these attachments, and it seems like life or death. There's no question I can give this up. You identify it. But of course you have to give it up. Why? Mrityu sabharaschaham. Krishna declares in the 10th chapter, as death I take everything away. So Prabhupada points out, I think it's in that purport or on a lecture he gives on that verse, that people often ask, they're asking, can you show me God? Or have you seen God? Like that. So Prabhupada's answer is always, do you have the eyes to see God? But then when he comes to this verse, he says, the materialist, he sees God at the end of life as death. All powerful. You can't say, no, I don't want to. No, there's no question. You don't have a choice. All of your agency is lost at that time. You're completely in the hands of the material energy. So whatever you value, your relations, loving relationships, your wealth, your prestige, your very body, everything finished. So, but you're not finished. That's the thing. The Jayate Mayate Bhakadacha. That the soul, yourself, is not finished. But you have made your bed, so to speak, and you have to sleep in it by everything you've done and thought in that lifetime. And you take another lifetime and begin illusion. So so the intervention comes through the spiritual master, representing the super soul, representing Krishna, giving the scriptures, which are also Krishna's words, to whoever is receptive, whoever is open to it. It's going to always be a minority, especially in Kali Yuga. But Lord Chaitanya, proved through Prabhupada that it can spread all over the world, and thousands of people can be benefited. So the intervention comes, and you have a whole different way of looking at life, and a whole different way of looking at yourself, and that's what this section is all about. So I wanted to share with you, because this is of course Shiva speaking, Lord Shiva speaking. And he comes, and he's one of the Mahajans, Lord Shiva, and he has several places in the Bhagavatam, especially the 4th canto, the Song of Shiva, which he teaches to the Prachetas, which they chant underwater for 10,000 years. Pretty amazing. But and he reveals, that he's a Vaishnava, and he prays to see Krishna and all these things. But I wanted to give you a taste for some other things that he wrote. It's a different view. And we should always remember that when Lord Chaitanya was on tour in South India, he would visit the Shiva temples. Why is he visiting the Shiva temples? But then then the prayers that he would offer are all like a sadhaka, begging for Bhakti and Govinda. And some of them were recorded, I think, by Murari Gupta, who wrote a book called Chaitanya Mangal. Someone wrote them. He didn't write that. But there are some examples of it. And all that, oh Lord Shiva, please give me pure bhakti for Krishna, like that, So this is Shiva revealing his inner mood. There's something called the Udvamnaya Tantra, which was written by Lord Shiva. And in that Udvamnaya Tantra, we find the famous Radhikripaksha Taksha Stabaraj. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. You've heard it before. Heard of it? You know, the Radha Kripakataksha, Munindra Vrindavanite. Recently, in the last big Maha Kirtan that Bhakti Bringa Govinda Swami ran, what is that state where they go? They can't build a temple, but there's a big hall. Is it Doha or something? In the Middle East. Dubai, in the Middle East. So this is on YouTube. You know, I like his kirtan, I turned it on, and there he's singing this. He's singing. Did you hear it? Yeah. It's the whole, everyone's got their cell phones, you know, because the words are a little complicated. So this is the companion. This is a poetic prayer chanted by Lord Shiva in the Urdhvanaya Tantra, a sequel to the other one that I'll give you just a sample of, Radha Kripakataksha Stavaraj, which is most famous. But then it says, if you chant both of these every day, then you enter into your eternal relation with Radha and Krishna. So it's quite, and it has this very lilting meter that anyone can learn. All right, I'll give you a sample here. This is the one to Krishna. He's worshiping Krishna. Bhajeva jaika mandanam samasta papa khandanam sabhakta chitta randanam sadhaiva nandanandanam. Supicha gucha mastakam sunada veno hastakam manangaranga sagadam namami Krishna nagadam. So he's offering obeisances, you see. I always worship Nanda's son. That's Krishna. I always worship Nanda's son, who is the unique ornament of Braja, who smashes everyone's sins, who pleases the hearts of his devotees, whose head is adorned with a fine arrangement of peacock feathers, who holds a sweet-sounding flute, who is an ocean of amorous dalliances. I bow to Krishna, the supreme paramour. And now I'll give you a sample of his Radha Kripakataksha. Well, let me give you one more here, so I'll give you two of each. So, Manojagava mochanam vishala bhala chandanam supita vastra shobhanam namami padmalochanam karara bindabhushanam smitava loka sundadam mahendra mana dharanam smadami Krishna balakam. I bow to him who relieves Cupid of his pride, whose forehead bears sandalwood tilak, who is splendorous with nice yellow dress, who has lotus petal eyes, who is beautified by lotus hands, who is graced by lovely smiling glances, and who curbs the vanity of the king of demigods, that's Indra. I remember the child Krishna. So you see, this is a very nice way of meditating on Krishna, becoming absorbed through the sound vibration. So now, the really famous one, Radha Kripakataksha Stavaraj. I'll tell you a little story about this. It's a local story. There was once, I had, during the 10 years, between 1998 and 2008, there was a huge project here. We were going to build a temple in Escondido. That's where we have the farm now. And the land was bought, money was collected, and several devotees were brought in to help with all of the things that need to be done for this project. And one of the devotees was named Chaitanya Bhagawan, who was an Indian devotee, very good with speaking to the Indians. He knew all the languages and everything. So he lived with me for a while. And then eventually he left and he went to Washington, D.C., became the temple president. And at that point, Mahatattva became president, I think. Oh no, the one before him, the fellow from South Africa. Huh? Shiki Mahiti. And then a few months later, Mahatattva came and stayed for years and helped build the temple. But there was another devotee named Pyari Charan. You remember him? And he was living with me, and I was chanting this, so he learned it. It was, you know, he's just a new initiate, and he learned it. He called me recently. He said, "I don't know if I'm really worthy to chant." You know, he's now become a dentist. He's living. He's still a devotee. But anyway. At the end of this, Radha Kripakataksha Stavaraj, the king of stotras, or of prayers, begging for the merciful sidelong glance of Srimati Radharani. That's what this title means. So at the end, there's something called a Palashuti. And the Palashuti are verses that give you, describe the benefit of chanting of the verse, the Ashtaka or whatever. This is like 12 verses. And there's several of them in here. And one of them says, if one stands in Radhakund, up to the neck, or up to the chest, or even up to the waist, and why would anyone do the neck if you can do the waist? Anyway, I don't know. And chants this stotra 100 times, then you get pure love for Radharani, you know. So he and Chaitanya Bhagavan, they had made friends, you know, and they were close friends, and they decided to try to do this. So they got their tickets, and they were able to get to Vrindavan, you know. But try as they might, they couldn't get to Radhakund, or if they got there, there wasn't any opportunity to chant it. You know, it's not that anyone can just go and chant. It's just interesting. But anyway, let me give you this first 2 verses. This is really famous. And if you get on YouTube and you search it, I don't know if you search Radhika or B.B. Govinda Swami in what's the place? Dubai. You may be able to hear this chanted. It's integrated into a kirtan. It's far out. Murindra binda bandite triloka shoka harini pasanna bhakta pangajena kunja bhuvilasini Brajanda bhanu nandini brajanda suna sangate kadakarishi mankripakataksa bhajanam. O Goddess worshipped by the kings of sages, O Goddess who removed the sufferings of the 3 worlds, O Goddess whose face is a blossoming lotus, O Goddess who enjoyed pastimes in the forest, O daughter of Vishabhanu, O companion of Braja's prince, O Srimati Radharani, when will you cast your merciful sidelong glance upon me? And one more, the second one is, they're all so sweet. Ashoka vriksha valladi vitana mandapastite pavala vala pallava pabhano rangri komale Padabhayas puratkade pabhuta sambadale kadakarishi mankripaka taksa bhajanam. Remember, this is written by Lord Shiva. O Goddess staying in a vine cottage by an Ashoka tree, O Goddess whose delicate feet are as splendid as red blossoms, O Goddess whose hand grants fearlessness. That's what we have there. It's called the Varabhaya Mudra, right? The mudra, the hand gesture that gives fearlessness. Abhaya is fearlessness, and Vara means a benediction. O the Goddess whose hand grants fearlessness, O abode of abundant transcendental opulences, O Srimati Radharani, when will you cast your merciful sidelong glance upon me? So I thought I'd give you that as a taste, to give the other side, one of the other sides of Lord Shiva, because he's the one who wrote this. And he's glorifying the devotee Chitraketu here as someone who, by his pure devotion, has transcended the dualities, and he's taken this curse in stride. You know, he's not going to worry about the curse and just let it play out, and continue glorifying the Lord and so forth. And that is really the mood of the devotee. In any circumstance, continue the service. If you can't do anything else, at least chant and hear, you know. And even if you can't chant, at the end of life, be in an environment where you can hear. That's the mercy of the devotees. And that's the perfection of your life. And hopefully not come back. And if you do have to come back in a family of devotees, and be one more birth like that. Okay, any questions? Yes. Yeah. Bhakti Chat, take that mic.
In chapter 4, Shiva's prayer that you mentioned, doesn't he describe Krishna's Vishnu form? The one that you're
talking about Canto 4. You're talking about the Song of Shiva in Canto 4 that I mentioned?
Yes, or Canto, sorry. He describes Krishna's Vishnu form, right?
He does. He does. He describes Aniruddha, Sankarshan, Vasudev, and what they're in charge of the mind, the intelligence, like that.
Yeah. And then he gives a description, I think, of the body features.
He does, and he's glorifying. And then near the end, he has this prayer, Sada Sadat Padma Palata Roshisa Nakauditi Nonta Magan Badundada. And I forget the rest of the Sanskrit, but he's describing Krishna, when will I, O Supreme Guru, please reveal to me your lotus feet, like that, Yeah, it's excellent. I remember working on that as not an editor, but a proofreader. And as soon as I saw that prayer, I memorized it. It's like 30 or 4 verses, which I don't know if I know even a few by now. They're in there. They just have to be resurrected. But that's a wonderful, because Lord Shiva comes in different parts of the Bhagavatam, and of course he's ultimately the destroyer. He expands into Rudras and he destroys the whole universe. He just dances. Tandava Nritya, devastating dance. You ever see those things they make, with him in the middle there dancing, destroying you? So he's kind of, because he's in charge of overseeing the mode of ignorance. He's not in the mode of ignorance, but he's overseeing it. But he has, he's a Mahajan, a great exemplar of devotion, and a great source of the Siddhanta, the final teachings, which he's giving here. He comes in various places in Bhagavatam and, adds a special flavor.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol
Thank you.
Purushottam.
I have something related to Prabhupada I wanted to know. So when he got sannyas, after that does he used to visit on the street and distribute books in sannyas dress, or he became more... When he used to visit Delhi and live...
Yes,
Was it before or after?
I think Delhi was before. Mm-hmm. By that time he was living in Radha Damodar, and he was really absorbed in the early 60s in writing the books, writing the Bhagavatam, which is a great endeavor. You can imagine trying to write, a three hardback books like that with no money. You're not part of the BBT where you can had nothing. So he had to raise money, by charity in order to print the first book, and on the basis of the first book, print the second book. So he spent those early 60s, which is when he was took sannyas. He took sannyas in 58, I think, 59.
And he was writing by hand?
No, he had a typewriter.
Typewriter.
Yeah, 2 fingers. Manual typewriter.
So thinking and just typing.
I'm sorry?
He used to think and type.
Yeah, of course. Well, he had the books, commentary,
Not the tape or anything.
Nothing. No. That came later. That speeded everything up. It took 4 years to print those 3 books. You can imagine, 60 to 64, basically. And but it's interesting that because I do this editing all the time, so I always come back to that. But it directly involves this, and that is the printer would give him proof sheets, and he would go over and make corrections on the proof, and then give it back, and he would do another one, and then make more corrections. So what we see in the Delhi Bhagavatams, we call them, the ones that he brought with him, they printed himself. I mean, there are a lot of, as he says in the book, there are a lot of faults because English is second language, But certain standards he set there, that I'm trying to say, well, this is what he wanted, but he shows, because the other books he didn't do that. By the time he because it'd be too slow, he came to America, and when he got that dictaphone, dictaphone is actually a brand name for a dictating machine. And by Krishna's merciful arrangement, a typist arrived who knew how to transcribe. He wasn't even a devotee. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yes, you can sit on this bench, but don't sit way over there because that's the lady side. Yeah, you can sit there. So when Gargamuni found that and brought it to him, and miraculously Prabhupada knew how to use it. So he's dictating, But then the typist, when Prabhupada chants some Sanskrit, what's he going to type? Some blank, some little, marks. So it was a whole thing. Then he needed the Sanskrit editors. He needed, Pradumna and everyone, So that developed slowly. But what I want to just call attention to, because as you may note and may know, in the Bhagavad Gita itself and in most of the other books, we find this standard of, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, manmana bhavamat bhakto, leaving out the Bhagavad Gita. Now, can you imagine someone, talking about the Quran or the Bible and leaving that out? I read Quran yesterday, then today I'm going to read Bible. Prabhu, it's the Quran and the Bible, isn't it? You always say the. That's a way of honoring the book. Just like we have Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Prabhupada says Srimad Bhagavad Gita at the end of each, they call it the colophon, at the end of each chapter. So that, and Srimad Bhagavad, this is a way of showing respect for the book. So practically 99% of the time in that Delhi Bhagavatam, Prabhupada has he called it the Bhagavad Gita. He didn't have diacritics or anything. The Bhagavad Gita. So, but when he was dictating the introduction, which is a big project, And oftentimes, maybe 50% of the time or more, he would just eliminate the, and he didn't go over it again. And so that became kind of the standard. And even when he's dictating later cantos of the Bhagavatam, he says the editors took it out. Because the standard is not that. But it's like a big lift for me to try to convince my colleagues now, because I'm not, that the Da should be back in. I got them all in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Ishopanishad, the Krishna book, and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. But I'd like to get it back in the Bhagavatam and also the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, don't you just naturally say the Bhagavad Gita? Yeah. I mean, that's the way I always heard it. Okay, anything else?
Just a quick, how many rounds, Prabhupada, did you chant?
Asking me. As far as I know, he was chanting 64 rounds. I mean, that was the standard in the Gaudiya Math. But, what's really amazing, I may be wrong about this, that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati set that standard, but he didn't have you would know, but he didn't have a japa period. I mean, there's no japa period if you
Thinking how he used to manage his schedule,
and then when he was working, I mean, for a long time he was working as a disciple, right? Yeah. Oh, really? Okay. Well, see, he would know. So, yeah. So was it 16? Was it 16 he was doing? Whatever. We don't know. Yeah. I'm not sure, but he always, at a certain point, he's talking about how, he's always chanting, chanting in his mouth. And the devotees who would travel with him would see that, his lips are moving slightly, he's chanting. It doesn't look like he's chanting, but he's chanting. So that's a constant remembrance. Paul, do you have something?
No.
Besides the mic? You're just holding the mic. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Okay, just one second, because we only have one mic, and we have a lot of big audience outside YouTube. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about this part in the Bhagavatam that we're coming up to that too in the end of the chapter. That blesses us, gives us blessings. That if you raise early, if you recite this story of King Chittaketu, then you'll be blessed to go back. If you remember Krishna, then you go back to Godhead. And also the stotras that you mentioned, that you'll get phenomenal blessings.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm just wondering about how does it actually work.
Well, of course, you can't do it superficially. There's often a caveat that you chant them with full concentration or purely or whatever, But they're there. I mean, in the CC, there's one that was written by Krishnadas Kaviraj for the Shikshastika, because you may or may not know that the Shikshastika was not written as an Ashtaka. It was written by Lord Chaitanya. These 8 verses were scattered and collected by Rupa Goswami in the Māyāvādī. Māyāvādī is Rupa Goswami's nectar file, about 400 verses. A small minority were written by him. But those 8 verses were there in different parts of the Māyāvādī, and I think they're collected by Krishnadas Kaviraj as the Shikshastika itself. But there's no 9th verse, because they're not written. So Krishnadas Kaviraj wrote one. Those who chant this every day attain pure love of God, whatever it is, this Shikshastika. It will certainly progress day by day toward pure love of God. These 8 essential verses Lord Chaitanya wrote to teach, to practice, and the goal of chanting Krishna's holy name. Day by day, whoever sings this hymn will surely reach a little closer to perfection, spotless Krishna praying. So we should do that.
I didn't know we were on YouTube. I don't want to ask a stupid question in front of the whole world.
Don't worry about it. No one knows who you are. But you have to hold it close to where you're speaking.
What's happening when you chant the mantra in the, spiritual world?
The Hare Krishna mantra?
Yeah, is there any writings from Prabhupada about what's happening in the world that we can't see when you're chanting?
When you chant the holy name? Yeah,
yes.
You chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Well, yeah, and it's certainly chanted, and many other configurations containing Krishna's name. in the spiritual world, in the ultimate planet of the spiritual world, because there's a lot of planets. But Goloka Vrindavan is we get an understanding of those pastimes from what happened 5,000 years ago on this earth. Krishna kind of brought a replica of Goloka Vrindavan. And that includes the famous, his pastimes as a coward boy with his friends, and with the coward girls, and with his mother and other seniors. All of that, those loving exchanges are there going on eternally in the spiritual world. So, especially when Krishna is out in the forest and the gopis and everyone are at home, then they feel this pain of separation, which the pain is part of the greatest pleasure, but that's another point. But and they'll chant his name. They'll sing his name and sing all kinds of verses describing him. So that because you feel the presence of Krishna when you chant his name, that's the point. Krishna is non-different from the sound vibration, whether it's here or in the spiritual world. And so that utterance of the holy name and singing gives you the presence of Krishna personally, and the separation is relieved. So the chanting is going on here and it's going on there. But here it's not a given because we're all in Maya. But if we accept the instruction to chant and we chant sincerely, we feel the presence of Krishna progressively in our lives. So the same thing is going on in the spiritual world. And that's why Prabhupada says in any condition of life, and that includes the spiritual world or here, one will be happy if he chants the holy name of the Lord. That's quite a benediction. If I had read that, I said, well, I'll try it. And then you don't want to stop.
So that means that as we sit here right now, just like there's a guy in New York that's mopping a floor on the 3rd floor of a skyscraper that we can't see.
Yeah.
But we can assume that that's probably happening. That in the same way that this Lord Krishna, that God, in this very moment is doing something in some other realm, and the mantra somehow can get us closer to actually being there with him.
Yes, yes, yes,
so
absolutely.
At what point does the mantra, at what point does it actually take off in your...
It's a question of purification. Purification of the mind, consciousness, and the senses. There's a nice verse describing that. Atak Shri Krishna Māyāvādī nabhavegrayam indriyai sevan mukha hijivado swayam eva sparatida. It says, with these materially contaminated senses, we cannot perceive the reality of the holy name, form, pastimes, qualities of Krishna. Nāmādi means the name, etc. There's four things that define a person: name, form, qualities, and activities. And the name, since Krishna is absolute, we can experience all four of them through the name, but we have to become purified. So this verse says, Atak Shri Krishna Nāmādi Nabhave grayam indriya, cannot be grasped or understood by our presently contaminated senses, which include the mind. But sevan mukhe hijivado, by serving this name, beginning with the tongue, by chanting and of course hearing. Jiva ado means also etc. Swayam eva sparatyada, Krishna progressively reveals himself according to our purification. So it's a whole, that's why sadhana is a marg, it's a path, bhakti marga. It's a process. Sadhana means a process to take you to a sadhya. And the sadhya is prema. Prema is the pure existence, pure state of consciousness, where you experience Krishna in his name, in his form, in his qualities, and everywhere. And you're never out of association with Krishna. No matter what age your body is, doesn't matter, you can be completely blissful, but not on the material plane. As you get older, you get depressed because you can't enjoy this pain, that pain, okay, let me take this drug and forget it. But if you just take the drug of the Hare Krishna mantra, you really get cured of the material disease. We have to end. Thank you for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.